Hello, sports fans, and welcome to this portion of the week where we talk This Week in Sports. That's our general sports chat brought to you by www.sports-kings.com. I'm your host, Andy. With me today, as always, as it seems, because we never get anybody else new on the panel for this show, we have Joe. How's it going, Joe?
Teamwork makes the dream work. That's today's motto.
Absolutely. And our other guest, who you see on just about every show we have these days, is Michael.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's up, Andy?
Oh, man, I don't know, just another day. So, we had an excellent basketball show for you guys today. Now we're going to try to steer away from the basketball and do a bit of general sports talk. I know a lot of people are, we missed the MLB aspect, and we finally have our hockey show that these guys do. That's great. And that just kicked off this week. I got my phone yelling at me here. Excuse me. I should shut that off. So let's jump right into our first topic, which is the NFL, and that's Troy Polamalu. And actually Heath Miller as well is kind of part of this topic, as the Steelers gave them both contract extensions. And I think a lot of people's thoughts were that at least Polamalu could become kind of the cap cut casualty. I know it's hard for guys like Jim Rickelto, one of our co-founders, to fathom, because Polamalu's been such a big part of the Steelers' lore the last decade. But it was sort of looking like the money wouldn't add up. And Polamalu, instead of being cut, got a 3-year extension. I think it was worth $20 million. Mm-hmm. And it's going to save Pittsburgh like $4.5 million against the cap this year. Let's talk. Heath Miller got a 2-year as well, but let's talk more about Polamalu, just because I think he's a more important aspect to the Steelers, and he's got the hair. How do you mess with the hair? Michael, let's go to you first. What do you think about this for the Steelers? Good, bad move, the way it all plays out?
Well, if it saves you, $4-something million, I'd say that's a decent move. Granted, the entire Steelers defense is aging. With the exception of Jarvis Jones, who they drafted in the first round. I think it was last year, maybe going on 2 years now. But if he's still got something to give, let him give it. I think I heard somewhere yesterday that there's some sort of aging flaw. I don't want to know. I don't want to go into what the guy says. But we as sports fans have this infatuation that everybody that we enjoy watching is going to stay in a certain uniform. And I think with the Steelers wanting to keep with the tradition of having Troy Polamalu back as in his spot back there. As a sports fan, I would find it tough to see Troy Polamalu not in a Steelers uniform anytime soon. Granted, it's going to come one day, but right now, I'm just not. I don't think We'll ask Rickelto, is he prepared for the shock of that? But if it makes sense, it seems like he's got some more to give. I would call it a half decent move, because you're going to need somebody to lead these young guys that are probably going to be coming in within the next 2 or 3 years.
And I guess my question's a little misleading, because obviously it's a good move in the sense that they're saving a little money right now and not having to cut a lifetime or a long-time Steeler. The point I was getting to with could it be bad is the fact that, maybe they're holding an older guy who's been injury prone. I think he missed 9 games in 2012. He had to play linebacker a little bit last year. The part for me of whether or not it was a bad move is, should they have been trying to get an upgrade in the sense of a little bit of youth? Joe, question to you.
Well, the problem is that they do have a lot of youth, and right now necessarily it's not a problem. But throughout that defense, they've got guys. They've got Cameron Hayward on the defensive line. They've got Jason Worlds at linebacker, who they just gave a restricted free agent tender to. They've got Cortez Allen at cornerback, not quarterback. That's Ben Roethlisberger. But they've got a lot of young guys that they're going to have to give out money to. So it seems like every year the Steelers are doing this kind of cap dance where they restructure somebody's contract. They make sure they stay under the cap and whatnot, just to keep the guys together. And eventually, their luck's going to run out. They're going to have to blow it up eventually. You saw Peyton Manning had to leave Indianapolis. Brian Urlacher had to leave Chicago, and he ended up not finding a job elsewhere. It's gonna come down to that kind of decision sooner or later for Troy Polamalu. And honestly, I think it might happen before the 3 years of this extension run up.
Yeah, and I mean, Palomalu went on Twitter, and I'll quote this because Michael knows very well that I was a quote machine yesterday. He said, "I am very thankful and blessed to be in the position to play my entire career in Pittsburgh." You know, which leads us all to believe that within this 3-year time frame, it's likely Palomalu will be done at the end of it, somewhere in the middle of it. I think geez, I just squeaked there. It's like puberty all over again. I think that Palomalu, he's been such a class act too. I mean, he's not a guy that's in the headlines for negative reasons, and he's been a phenomenal player when he can play. He has battled some injuries. He had that calf thing. But, I mean, you just see a guy out there. I mean, how many guys do you see, the flying Hawaiian, just jumping over the line of scrimmage, getting sacks, stopping ball carriers? I mean, he's great to watch, and he's, you know, one of my favorite players in the league for the past 5 or so years. I've loved watching the guy play, even though I'm not a Steelers fan, and I don't really say it to our guy Jim very often because it'll kind of fill his head and it'll explode.
Delusions of grandeur.
I want his, you know, I don't want his head to explode, but you know, I think it's overall, I think it's a great move for the Steelers. And with the youth thing, I was wondering, you know, because they do have youth, as Joe said, do they need to give some of these younger guys playing time? Do they need to start to build, you know, a foundation without Palomalu and guys of that nature that are getting older? They did cut like Larry Foote and a few other guys, but you know, Joe's right with the cap dance thing. Eventually, it's, you know, you can only restructure and extend so much until, you know, there's nowhere to go. You're backed into a corner, and I think that's when teams really hit a wall. And, you know, eventually it's going to happen for Pittsburgh. It happens to everyone. Right, Michael? Happened to the Lakers.
Oh, yeah. And it's,
Yeah,
it's
about
For another time. So let's jump right into the next topic, which is a little bit of MMA, the UFC. We don't really talk about that a lot. We did just launch our new site, Ring Kings. That's www.sports-kings.com/ringkings, and you can find all of your wrestling, UFC, boxing needs there. This topic we're going to discuss right now kind of touches on two of those. That's UFC, and that's actually women's UFC, because we're talking Ronda Rousey, the Machine. She's 9-0 in the UFC. She submits everybody she sees. I'm afraid of this woman, to be honest with you. And she's kind of calling Floyd Mayweather out, and it was kind of really a weird, like, underhanded comment she made. She kind of spoke of how she could take him if she invoked the monkey style of the little guy in the movie Bloodsport from I think it was the late 80s, it might have been the early 90s with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I think it was 87.
She said, yeah, she said she could kind of just meander over there, crawl like a bear, do the monkey style, and grapple Floyd and get him to the ground. And I don't even really know why she made the comment, but her defense was kind of that she spends a lot of time down on the mat, as we're Floyd. But I still begs the question, you know, does Floyd Mayweather stand there and let her take him down, or does he punch her in the head and KO her? Let's go to you first, Joe. What do you think about Ronda's comment here?
You know, I like it. I like the kind of, you know, smug attitude, like, you know, oh, I could take one of the best in the world in boxing. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't know that much about boxing, but, you know, from what I hear from people, she's definitely got, you know, that kind of, you know, run around, you know, definitely take down people. But Floyd Mayweather, you know, he's fast, man. He goes around everywhere. He could stay away for a while. I think it would be a very interesting fight, but it's kind of like comparing two different styles. So, you know, the only hypothetical is that, you know, maybe you put them in, you see what happens.
All right, Michael, why don't you take this one away?
Well, if I remember correctly, the guy that she's referring to in Bloodsport does end up meeting his match after he gets, like, bear hugged by this big dude. You know, so I don't think Floyd is going to be able to do that to her. I don't know. Personally, I'd like to see it. You know, throw him in a cage. Let's see what happens. I'm with you, Joe. But I've actually put my money on Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey is not somebody that I would want to meet in a dark alley late at night when I've had a couple of drinks and I'm stumbling around and she's looking for my wallet. You know, I mean, I don't want that. But, you know, I mean, I think it's nice that the UFC has got, you know, a lot of the guys would probably do that, but a woman who's, you know, just able to stand up and be like, yeah, I can kick your ass. Let's go. I mean, I think it's cool. And like I said, I don't even care if Ronda Rousey's the underdog in that one. I'd put my money on Rousey.
I think, you know, she's to the point where I feel like, you know, some people didn't like it. I know boxing purists didn't like it. Not to keep bringing up our guy Jim Ricalto, but he's a Floyd Mayweather fan, and he wasn't really a big fan of her comments. I think at this point she's kind of earned the clout within the UFC and within sports to be able to talk a little trash. I understand that women's fighting in UFC is a little bit underdeveloped at this point. It's a newer thing. But the point I tried to bring up, the point I tried to bring up was, just because it's not as competitive, it doesn't mean she's not a great fighter. I mean, if LeBron James beat me one-on-one in basketball, would that make him any less of a good player? No. I mean, I feel like it you know, would mean his competition sucked because obviously I'm not that great. But it wouldn't take away from his skill set. So I think you can say the same thing about Ronda. Just because the competition in women's UFC, women's MMA is a little watered down at this point, it's not as big, it doesn't mean she's not an exceptional fighter. You know, she was talking about how, and this was a point I left out at the beginning, how it would, you know, she thinks she could win against Mayweather if there were MMA rules. And I feel like there's such a gray area here because, you know, she obviously is the better mixed martial arts fighter than Mayweather. But from a puncher stance, I mean, or from a puncher standpoint, she doesn't stand a chance. I mean, you know, UFC fighters are exceptional at taking people down. She's one of the better ones there is. I mean, I think her submission rate in 9 wins is like 76% of the time. So she wants to get you on the ground. But Chuck Liddell carved out a pretty nice career for himself by not letting people take him down and just beating the hell out of them from the stand-up point. So I feel like if Mayweather, you know, had a few months to work on his takedown defense, nobody's going to take. He's not going to try to go to the ground. He's just going to stand there and he's lightning quick and he's going to knock heads off. Plus, Joe brought up before the show here that Mayweather has 15 pounds roughly on Rousey, and that's an entire weight class. We saw a guy like Anderson Silva didn't want to move up 15 pounds to fight John Jones, which, I mean, you would have to be insane to want to fight John Jones anyway.
Good God.
But still, 15 pounds is a lot. I mean, you're talking an entire weight class. It's not only that you have to gain the weight or lose the weight in some cases. It's that you have to learn how to move and fight with a different. 15 pounds is a lot. I mean, you're talking a few gallons of milk here. So let's jump into our. You like that milk reference? I thought it was kind of weird. Let's jump into our next one, which is we're going to go to the NBA, and that's Knicks fans. Glorious, glorious Knicks fans are kind of a little fed up with James Dolan. Go figure. And they're planning a boycott, and that's going to be, well, it's a protest, not a boycott, a protest out in front of Madison Square Garden before a Knicks-Pacers game, and that's March 19th. The group, real quick, is KF4L Rally, which stands for Knicks Fan for Life. They've put on these protests before. I think one of the guys is actually a Chicago-based Knicks fan. The two others are actually from New York City. They're promoting this thing on social media, and we know Knicks fans. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of them there, and they're going to go nuts. I mean, the Knicks stink. Joe, take us away with this Knicks thing.
Man, I just want to say before I get started, if the Knicks fans are this mad when the team still has Melo and they can still actually win some games like this, imagine what would happen if the Knicks decided to bottom out and, you know, just tank and go 15 wins in a season. I mean, that seems to be the average result for a lot of teams in the NBA. What's that?
We'll find out in a few months when Carmelo's no longer there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, the Knicks, they don't really have a lot for the future. And, you know, James Dolan has kind of put them in that situation because you go out, you splash for the big names like Melo, like Tyson Chandler. You know, they tried to make a trade for Rondo, I believe, earlier in the season. And, you know, they're not putting the right pieces together. They don't have a championship team. And the best way to do that is going to be for them to, you know, stink for a couple of years. If Knicks fans want to riot and say, here, we're going to tell you guys how to run the team, then, you know, there's going to be trouble there. I mean, the Knicks need to develop a serious plan because it doesn't seem like they have one that works with Carmelo Anthony right now.
Well, they're handcuffed, too. I mean, they do have a couple of young pieces. Unfortunately, they kind of clogged the same position. That's Tim Hardaway Jr. and Iman Shumpert,
yeah.
who they kept talking about trading constantly. Um, and neither of those two guys, at this point, I couldn't really call either of them a sure thing. They're 22-40, which means they would be looking at a good, decent, maybe a top 10 draft pick at this point, probably a lottery pick. But that pick is owed. They owe that pick to the Denver Nuggets. So, I mean, they're not they're not even going to have their own pick. So they're handcuffed in that aspect, and then they're handcuffed because Carmelo. I mean, it's starting to look more and more like Carmelo could leave. He has that option after this season rather than next. And then you have Amari's untradeable contract. You have Tyson Chandler, who's got an unfriendly contract, though I think teams would take him in a trade just because he's proven he's won a championship in Dallas. But, yeah, they're in trouble. Michael, your thoughts on the potential protest of the Knicks and just the state of this New York basketball team?
Well, as a Lakers fan, as you so pointed out earlier and as I've pointed out in many of the shows, good for them, because trust me, if I lived out in L.A., I would be in front of the Staples Center picketing every night with Mike D'Antoni doing whatever the hell Mike D'Antoni's doing. I don't even know. But I digress on that. As I was saying earlier, I'm not sure if anybody caught yesterday's King's Court show. If you didn't, go back and watch this. I said yesterday, after Amari and J.R. Smith do their whole back and forth thing about comments and everything, the whole team needs to be executed. If you got to start at the bottom, execute from the bottom and go all the way up, kill the brass, the whole thing needs to be imploded. Good for you, Knicks fans, for finally standing up, pulling a D. Snyder and going, we're not going to take it anymore. You know, I mean, I applaud that. I applaud
Nice.
that. You guys finally stood up and were like, no, we're not having this crap. This is Occupy Wall Street 2.0 right here.
It is.
Occupy MSG.
It's crazy, and I love the D. Snyder Twisted Sister reference. Very good, very
Gotta
good.
love Stay Hungry was a great album. Hey guys, if you're watching and you didn't check that out, go back in that back catalog. Stay Hungry is a fantastic album from the '80s. Go do it.
And we're not going to take it's probably one of the best videos that MTV ever had.
Oh yeah,
MTV
and then
played videos.
Then I Want to Rock. Then there was The Price, Stay Hungry, the title track. I mean, it was just fantastic, just killer cuts.
And we have like 20-year-olds out there right now really baffled, going, hell is Twisted Sister?
I'm 24.
I mean, that's 4 years older than 20. I'm surprised you knew, actually, to be honest with you, because that's almost a little before my time, and I'm 30. But, anyways, let's jump into, we're going back to the NFL here, and we're talking the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be a topic that's kind of a 1A and a 1B. And the first on the slate is the Eagles are not planning to retain the services of Michael Vick. Shocker, I know. I know you're all surprised. So we knew this was coming. Nick Foles, they have Nick Foles. He's going to be their starting quarterback going forward. They want to bring in some sort of a veteran help. I would think Michael Vick is obviously not the right fit there because he still wants to play football. I think you need that older dog. You need a guy like, like a Matt Hasselbeck. You need a guy like that to be there to guide him. Nick Foles, that is, moving forward and not expect to really play. A guy who's just happy with collecting a check while sitting on the bench and playing some preseason games. What do we think about? I mean, let's not really talk about what we think about this because I know we all knew he was out in Philly. Let's talk like one good destination for Michael Vick, like your number one best destination for Michael Vick. Go with you first, Michael.
Honestly, ESPN. You're done, Mike. You're done. Hey, okay, now, look, seriously.
Bayless,
hear
ladies
me
and
out on
gentlemen.
this one. Hear me out on this one. You look at you look at all the quarterbacks and the situations in the NFL. Yeah, you've got guys that are running this read option system, but are you really going to take a chance on a 30-something-year-old quarterback with injury troubles, who's subpar throwing motion, can't really hit a target? I mean, I personally, if I were a GM, I wouldn't take a chance on him. We knew this. You knew this day was coming, Mike. It's high time you just start preparing for life after the NFL. If you got to take a year off, whatever, take a year off. Maybe a team's going to contact you, but hey, get your broadcasting skills going, man. You probably could make a heck of a useful piece on the NFL Countdown, man. ESPN is the way to go for you.
Yeah, I mean, and you just brought up the age. He's 33 going on 30. He'll be 34 by the time the next season starts. His birthday's in June. And I feel like for a guy like a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning or an Aaron Rodgers, your traditional stand in the pocket and throw guy, they can probably play football until they're 40 or close to. But for a guy like Michael Vick or like even the newer guys, Colin Kaepernick and RG3, do you want these guys
even Russell
playing?
Wilson.
Yeah, do you want these guys playing when they're 35 because their strong suit is running the ball? And I think if I was Michael Vick, I would be a little upset that this read option thing is so popular after, his height, his pinnacle, the pinnacle of his career.
And right now, I mean, you brought up a great point with RG3. RG3, if he keeps going, could possibly turn into Michael Vick 2.0.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
And covering the Redskins for DC Sports Kings, that's www.dcsports or sports-kings.com/DC Sports Kings. Watching the whole RG3 saga unfold with what the Redskins gave up for it, which by the way, St. Louis is sitting pretty in April or in this year's draft, but that's a whole nother show. I mean, you gave up so much to get this guy, and then he clashes with the coach. Has no offensive line, can't hit the barn side of a broad when it comes to throwing.
The barn side of a broad.
And it's just if Jay Gruden does not, Andy Dalton this kid to death, this is Michael Vick 2.0, and I think that, the Redskins are going to be kicking themselves in the keister for years to come if this doesn't pan out.
And, back to Michael Vick real quick before we kick this to Joe. Maybe he should try the ESPN route. Maybe Animal Planet will give him a job. He can host a show there.
Oh!
I'm sorry. Joe, your thoughts on Vick? I had to.
Yeah, you did.
Man, that was a low blow. Now, honestly, if I'd pick one team, I was going to say the Redskins for Michael Vick. Send them to go back up RG3. Let them move Kirk Cousins. Get a couple extra draft picks. God knows they need them.
I like the mentor aspect there.
I think our Dan Snyder's already come out public and was like, yeah, we're not trading Kirk Cousins because there was talk of that. There was talk of that after the season.
RG3 a more effective way to get injured.
Ooh,
running the ball.
Yeah, I mean, go for the concussions rather than the knee. I mean, at least you can sneak your way onto the field with a concussion. You can't sneak your way onto the field.
So your point, you were making a point, Joe. We kind of cut you off there.
My point is that I think what's important to look at with Michael Vick is the historical significance of what he's done. I mean, you talked about how he got in a little late to the read option. I think this whole read option thing doesn't happen if Mike Vick doesn't have the success he does in the middle of 2000s, because then that gets all the guys going to college. Cam Newton started in 2007, Colin Kaepernick, Robert Griffin III started in 2008, 2009. I mean, Michael Vick gave them the hope that they could play quarterback. He brought this whole era in, really. It just took a little time delay. I think, to get back to the football side of Vick, I think, for by and large, he is done. I don't think he can absolutely not hold the starting quarterback position. Even if he was healthy, he couldn't really play at that kind of level. So I think his best bet is to find a backup role. I mean, everybody says, hey, New York Jets, Jacksonville Jaguars need a quarterback, have Michael Vick. He could back up Geno Smith. He could back up Johnny Manziel if the Jaguars draft him.
I've heard Buffalo, too. What do you think about Buffalo? You're a Buffalo fan.
Buffalo wanted him when Chan Gailey was the coach right after Vick was coming out of jail. I don't think Doug Marrone has any interest in him. I think E.J. Manuel's the guy, and Thad Lewis is the second. So that's pretty lock and key on the quarterback situation there.
All right, so our 1B for this topic.
Right quick, Mike, Andy. You remember a few years ago when Kevin Cobb was the backup there in Philadelphia? Michael Vick gets out. Kevin Cobb has that monster one game and then gets traded. And then, obviously Michael Vick comes in. What's going to happen if Nick Foles, ends up pulling a Kevin Cobb and starts, crapping the bed? What's going to happen with this Philadelphia quarterback situation? I mean, are we going to
Matt Barkley?
Ooh, wow.
Well, I mean, I think they're still better off without Vick either way. But I think almost at this point, it's kind of a foregone conclusion that Nick Foles is the real deal. I hate to be a prisoner of the moment, but I think at worst he's better than what Vick gives them. So
that's true too. I mean, I agree with you 100%.
I get what you're saying, though.
What's going to happen? I mean,
Michael's being glass half empty. What if? And that's a good question. Who knows? I mean,
Barkley, be optimistic.
you go back to the drawing board. I don't know. I feel like, but you're saying at the beginning, at the top of the topic that Vic's done, and I think we both agree, Joe and I. So either way, I guess it doesn't matter. Let's talk DeSean Jackson now. Jackson's coming off. He's coming off his best year as a wide receiver, though. I think. Let me look at this. 82 catches for 1,300 yards and some change with 9 touchdowns. I mean, that's a pretty big season for a guy who's more Mike Wallace than he is Calvin Johnson. Obviously, he's not a big receiver. He's kind of one of those burners. Joe knows because he kind of has a little bit of Lee Evans in him. But I think now they're talking about DeSean Jackson being on thin ice. And granted, yes, he has a lot of attitude issues, but it sort of seems like from reading this article, and this article is from CBS Eye on Football, it seems like he's just the talk is more about Jackson becoming a casualty because they can save a lot of money. So he has a $48.5 million contract that he signed before 2012. Now, if the Eagles were to dump him before June 1st, the cap hit would only be $2 million, and then $4 million in 2000, it would be $4 million in 2000, or $2 million in 2014, $4 million in 2015. But it would create $10.5 million that could be spent in 2014 on other players. Actually, they talk about Nick Foles because he's due for a contract here shortly. A guy who caught 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, had over 80 catches. It is like, should we be even talking about and contemplating cutting him to save a little money? Like, is that logical? We'll go to you first, Joe.
I don't think it's logical. I mean, he was a perfect fit in Chip Kelly's offense last year. He's exactly the guy that they need, and they should be really sure that he's not going to be successful anywhere else if they're going to go ahead and cut him. I think he's exactly the guy they need. And outside of him, they've got Riley Cooper, who they signed to an extension. Jason Avant, who was their kind of number 4 receiver.
Riley. I'm sorry.
Jason Avant just got cut. Jeremy Maclin missed all of last season. He's back on a 1-year deal to see if he can come back from a torn ACL. I mean, obviously they'd be doing the right thing if they cut DeSean Jackson. But I think the impact to their offense, because I need so many speedy guys to run the style that Chip Kelly likes, I don't think the team would be – I think the impact to the team would be greater than keeping him, greater than the price of keeping him at the risk of, all this off-field drama.
And I think for his skill set and his size and his style, I put him there with a guy like Mike Wallace. And if you ask –
yeah.
I got muted again there. So I would rather have a guy like DeSean Jackson over a guy like Mike Wallace any day of the week. And I feel like he does fit Chip Kelly's style, and he is valuable. And I understood when I was first reading this article here that I have popped up, and they were talking about potentially cutting him because of his attitude and stuff of that nature. But as soon as it went into the realm of we can save this amount of money, and it started to seem more like let's make a deal, let's be tightwads, let's pinch the wall a little bit. That's where they lost me. So, Michael, your thoughts on DeSean Jackson?
Oh man, well.
And for the record, Michael, everybody just got muted by you again.
Oh, okay, thanks. So yeah, somebody tried to call. I think work tried to call me. So when I went to hit decline, it screwed everything up because you can't call me on my day off, especially when I only had 2 last month. No. But anyway, I digress. DeSean Jackson. I mean, why would? First off, the first thing I would have done was I wouldn't have given Riley Cooper a 5-year extension. That probably would have saved me a little bit more money. If you cut DeSean Jackson, you better, like Joe was saying, you better be prepared to, back that up. $10 million, saving is great, but are you going to be able to fill the hole that DeSean Jackson left by signing players with $10 million? I mean, how many players are you going to have to sign to make up for one DeSean Jackson? And
well, it's not like these wide receivers are just growing on trees in the NFL either. Right?
No, I mean, and you're going to find one in the draft? Yeah, it's possible, but you got the boom or bust mentality. They're either going to pan out and be great, or they're going to completely flop, and then you're like, well, what if? You know, if it's going to happen, be prepared. I mean, you know, Philly better be prepared. I don't think it should happen, though. I mean, DeSean Jackson was a monster. He actually helped me out in one of my fantasy leagues last year.
Nice.
So, hey, shout out to DeSean Jackson for getting me, you know, some points and actually carried me to the championship game in that one. I didn't expect to be there. So, you know, it's crazy that we're even talking about this. I don't get it. But.
So let's do our last topic right here because we're kind of getting to the limit. That's MLB, and we got a little something for you big like entertainment buffs out there because this has something to do with Chelsea Handler. You know, Chelsea has her own show on E! She's been here and there. She dated 50 Cent. She's a very funny woman, in my personal opinion. Yeah. But she's not a big fan of Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod. And I was hoping that, you know, I would see that she was a huge Yankees fan, but I don't even see that anywhere in this article I was reading. Apparently yesterday, on Wednesday, she was on the Howard Stern show, and she spoke to Howard about how much she dislikes A-Rod. And this is a conversation she had with Alex Rodriguez recently. And this is what Chelsea says. She told Howard Stern, "I told A-Rod to get away from me. You're disgusting. You're gross." And then A-Rod replied with, "Why am I gross? We got off on the wrong foot. I read all of your books. I'm a big fan." To which Handler responded, "No, I don't know why you're a big fan. I think you're a," and this is the part where if you have children, earmuffs, because Chelsea Handler said, "I think you're a fucking asshole." And she went on to call him a buffoon and a pile of shit on the Howard Stern show. So, Chelsea Handler on Alex Rodriguez, fair or foul, Michael?
100% fair. First of all, Chelsea Handler, I knew who you were. I knew you had a show. I didn't know you were a comedian. I knew about your books. I wasn't a fan at first, but after hearing this tirade, I think I might have to be. I mean, this is incredible. I think Alex Rodriguez has this in his head that, you know, oh, I'm Alex Rodriguez. I live in New York. I play in New York. I've dated everybody under the sun. Everybody loves me. And then Chelsea Handler comes in and gives his ego a swift kick in the testicles, and it's just like, you know, he doesn't know how to respond to that. I love that. I thought it was great. I think more people need to do this.
Yeah.
I think it was funny the way she handled it, too.
Shout out to Howard Stern. Howard, I love you, man. You're amazing.
And I'll say, as a person who, my girlfriend used to watch, like, the Chelsea show every night. So, you know, watching some of it here and there, she's incredibly funny. I mean, she kind of is almost like the David Spade for women. She's got that really dry, really snarky, like, you know, the comeback, the snappy jokes, and she's just a very funny woman.
Wow,
Joe, your thoughts
said
on
David
Chelsea?
Spade was funny. Holy crap.
I love David Spade. I just think he's such like a smart ass. He kills me. But Joe, your thoughts? Fair or foul with Chelsea?
That's absolutely what it is. I think it's pretty fair. And you know, I do watch the Chelsea show with my girlfriend from time to time. And what I gather is that she takes the easy targets and then she just drops an atom bomb of humor on them. Like, she is no holds barred. It's no punches pulled. It's hilarious. And I think it's fantastic what she said to A-Rod. I mean, this whole thing with, you know, appealing and steroids and blah 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 blah. It gets old. You know, I thought it was fantastic to see this. Good for her.
Well, the best part to me was the fact that she didn't even say it. Nothing she said that's reported was like from a place of being a Yankee fan or even a baseball fan. It was like she said something like, he sleeps around, he's a scumbag, like that. And I love it. Like, we see so many people down on A-Rod because of the baseball stuff. And my biggest point was like when he was trying to sue the Players Association. Like, that's insane to me. A guy who wants to continue his career in the league trying to sue the very people, like, that would be like me being like, I'm suing you guys at Sports Kings, but I still want to write. And I still want to be part of the site. Like, it makes no sense to me. So I guess good for Chelsea Handler because I think it's funny. And again, we were pointing out yesterday that we kind of sounded like TMZ with that Andre Drummond, Jeanette McCurdy topic. But I like these topics. I think Chelsea Handler, very funny, great job. I guess that'll close us out for today. I want to thank Joe and Michael for being troopers and hitting this show up with me every week. I think we do a fantastic job. It's a great place to get your general news. I know we have our basketball show, we have our football show, and we have our hockey show now. But it's a good place to just get a quick re-up on what's happened this week. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I want to tell you guys to stop over to www.sports-kings.com or hit us up on Facebook. Just search for Sports-Kings, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Real Sports Kings. Make sure you subscribe to our videos, our channel. Leave some comments and tell your friends. I mean, the most important thing, get the word going. I mean, we do a fun show here, and we like you guys to interact. Until next time, thank you for joining. Later.
Mazel tov.
L'chaim.